via Mertech.com with your daily news update. Okay, here we are on July the 28th in the year of our Lord 2025. Got, as usual, some great information for you. Let me just jump over here, Mertech on Rumble. And this is the video you're looking at right now, episode 1637. Let's go ahead and click on that and pause this. All right, and close the chat box. Scroll down here and open up the description box. And we have information from Truth Bomb Mary, Dr. Steve Turley, Bannons War Room, and Doug in Exile. Alrighty, but before we get into that, I do have a couple of shout outs for Debbie BS. Commented on my episode 1636, and Debbie BS also commented on my extra 422C. So thank you, Debbie BS. I appreciate your comments and your support very much. All right, I'm giving that a thumbs up. So let's come up here and start off with Truth Bomb Mary. Trump name drops a huge Epstein connection, part 1, Larry Summers. Okay, let's take a listen and see what that's all about.
She is being talked to by a very smart man, by a very good man, Todd Blanche. And I don't know anything about the conversation. I haven't really been following it. A lot of people are asking me about pardons. Obviously, this is no time to be talking about pardons. But a lot of people have asked about pardon. This is just not a time to be talking about pardons. Todd will come back with whatever he's got. You're making a very big thing over something that's not a big thing. You should be talking about, if you're going to talk about that, talk about Clinton, talk about the former president of Harvard, talk about all of his friends, talk about the hedge fund guys that were with him all the time. Well, I don't want to talk about that. What I do want to say is that Todd is a great attorney, but you want to be speaking about Larry Summers, 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 speaking about Larry Summers, Larry Summers, Larry Summers. You ought to be speaking about some of his friends that are hedge fund guys. They're all over the place. You ought to be speaking about Bill Clinton, who went to the island 28 times. I never went to the island.
Do you maintain you did not write a letter for Jeffrey Epstein's birthday?
I don't even know what they're talking about. Now, somebody could have written a letter and used my name, but that's happened a lot. All you have to do is take a look at the dossier, the fake dossier. Everything's fake with that administration. Everything's fake with the Democrats. Take a look at what they just found about the dossier. Everything is fake. They're a bunch of sick people. Where did you see the people laying outside?
Right across the street you're going.
Todd Blanche is a great gentleman. He's a great man. He's a great lawyer. He's got a great heart. But he's over there now. I don't know exactly what's happening, but I certainly can't talk about pardons.
Can you trust what she's telling him? She's a convicted trafficker who's eager to get out of prison.
Well, he's a professional lawyer. I think he's been through things like this before. But, you should focus on Clinton. You should focus on the president of Harvard. The former president of Harvard. You should focus on some of the hedge fund guys. I'll give you a list. These guys lived with Jeffrey Epstein. I sure as hell didn't.
LinkedIn co-founder and Democratic donor Reid Hoffman, former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, and actor Woody Allen are all on the list of elites who continued to associate with sex offender Jeffrey Epstein after his 2008 conviction, according to new reporting in the Wall Street Journal. Hoffman admitted to the Journal that he visited Epstein's island once for business. He says their last contact was in 2015. This story begins, and I think we already knew that Larry Summers, so former Treasury Secretary, former president of Harvard as well, I think we already knew that he had some Epstein connections, but this story begins that, so I'm quoting from the Wall Street Journal, Lawrence Summers wanted $1 million to fund an online poetry project his wife was developing. The former Treasury Secretary and one-time Harvard University president turned to Jeffrey Epstein and said, I need small-scale philanthropy advice. My life will be better if I raise $1 million for Lisa. Lisa, I take it to be his wife. Mostly it will go to make a PBS series and for teacher training ideas. Again, this is in 2014. This guy already was convicted of sexual misconduct with a minor. So the Jamie Dimon, the banking news is interesting because it's possible that this legal action will bring to light more a better public understanding of the extent of Epstein's connections and goings on. Like you said, it's just amazing his level of access to people like Larry Summers, who was a top government official, a top academic official, if there is such a thing. His access to Clintons.
New Republic. This is Gene Sperling. He resigned from Biden's administration the other day in the middle of the stock market crash. He was a veteran of Bill Clinton's team from the campaign days in Little Rock. Sperling had worked on Hillary Clinton's presidential run, and when Obama won, Sperling was left without a job in the administration. Larry Summers, an old friend and colleague, was named head of the NEC, and he urged Timothy Geithner, the new Treasury Secretary, to find Sperling a position. Geithner made him a counselor. So Gene Sperling isn't just friends with Larry Summers. Larry Summers got him his job that he then rose to be Biden's top economic advisor, and then left our economy in flames to go work on Kamala Harris's campaign. Biden's senior economic advisor resigns after market crash. Will work for Harris campaign. I'm not going to read the article where Biden brags about the economy after a market crash. Biden campaign's outside economic advisors include Larry Summers. That was back in 2020. Former U.S. Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, an academic and longtime economic aide to Democratic presidents, is among the people now advising Joe Biden's presidential campaign, according to two people familiar with the matter. So who is Larry Summers? Economic advisor to Clinton, Obama, Biden, and a really good friend of Jeffrey Epstein and a frequent flyer on the Lolita Express. Washington Life magazine interview with a public servant. Larry Summers speaks with Gene Sperling. Economic advisor to Biden in 2020, economic advisor to Biden that stepped down today. This is a timeline of people surrounding the pandemic preparedness efforts of eugenics-believing Bill Gates and his buddy Jeffrey Epstein. So there's a person who keeps coming up in this research. He was an economic advisor during the Clinton administration, during the Obama administration, and he is currently advising Joe Biden on crashing our economy right now. Efforts. This is a timeline of people surrounding the pandemic preparedness efforts of eugenics-believing Bill Gates and his buddy Jeffrey Epstein. So there's a person who keeps coming up in this research. He was an economic advisor
during the Clinton administration, during the Obama administration, and he is currently advising Joe Biden on crashing our economy right now. His name is Lawrence Summers. He's in that famous picture of Bill Gates with Boris Nikolic and Jeffrey Epstein and Jess Staley of JP Morgan Chase. So I'm just going to read. This is a timeline. So this was happening. See, Jeffrey Epstein started funding a bunch of Harvard scientists. This all surrounds the CRISPR-Cas9 technology that was used to create gain-of-function viruses. So I'm just going to read. 1998. Leslie Wexner's Young Global Leaders, UnlimitedHangout.com. This is by Whitney Webb. It is worth noting that Epstein's first official donation to Harvard in 1998 was the same year he was using his private plane, now best known to the public as the Lolita Express, to transport then Deputy Treasury Secretary Lawrence Larry Summers. Summers' then boss, Treasury Secretary Richard Rubin, had previously facilitated Epstein's first official visit to the Clinton White House in early 1993. Summers would become president of Harvard University shortly after the conclusion of the Clinton administration in July 2001. During Summers' tenure, Epstein's access to Harvard's campus and many of its most notable professors increased exponentially. While president of Harvard, Summers continued to fly on Epstein's plane. Now, the reason I found that information is because I received a death threat for a video I made called Gates, Epstein, Biden. And the death threat involved Arkansas. And I hadn't mentioned Clinton in that video, so I treated it as a clue and started looking up Clinton in relation to pandemic preparedness. And what got me on this originally was Christian Terez, the MEP from Romania, pointing out that Moderna had tested its vaccine for COVID-19 in 2016.
The report states that, and I quote, "Nothing was known about the SARS-CoV-2 and the disease caused by this new virus, including nothing about the genetic sequence," end quote. This statement is false. In the documents submitted to EMA by Moderna, for example, to receive authorizations, they submitted studies of their vaccines conducted prior to 2019. Actually, they submitted documents showing that they tested their vaccines since 2016.
They had to submit paperwork to get the emergency authorization in Europe. And he wants to know why they were testing a vaccine way back then for a pandemic that wasn't supposed to have existed until 2020. So you give me a death threat, I use it as a clue. And turns out Clinton did have something to do with some of the pandemic preparedness stuff. This is a hit piece on Trump, but I noticed that they told on themselves in a couple of ways in this article. So I've taken excerpts out of this article from NBC News. In April 1998, President Bill Clinton read a Richard Preston novel, The Cobra Event, about a biological attack on the U.S. using a lethal virus that spreads like the common cold. It scared the bejesus out of him, recalls Kenneth Bernard, a now retired U.S. Public Health Service official who was then representing the U.S. in Geneva at the World Health Organization. Clinton set the wheels of government in motion, and the result was the first federal government effort to marshal resources in preparation for a pandemic, including the creation of the National Emergency Medical Stockpile, which stowed vaccines and medical gear in secret locations around the country. Bernard was appointed as the first official on the National Security Council whose sole job was to focus on health threats. So this is that article I was just reading from, and there was something else interesting in it. Let me find it real quick. Okay. In 2007, a journal published by the American Society for Microbiology included an article that warned about the potential for an epidemiological time bomb if a new strain of coronavirus emerged from wild animals in a Chinese wet market where vendors slaughter live animals for customers. COVID-19 is believed to originate in such a market. Wow. So this is the big topic right now, right? The origins of COVID thing. And now all of a sudden we weren't allowed to say that it was a lab leak, but now it's okay to say lab leak, but it's not okay to say we also had a lab leak in Fort Detrick in August of 2019.
All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and pause that there. I mean, this is the deep state. I'm telling you, they probably have plans out for 20 or 30 years. You know, this 2007 was what, 13 years before they actually came out with COVID-19. Isn't it amazing how they know they can predict what's going to happen in the future? And, these, like this Larry Summers. We'll share another video here from Dr. Steve Turley that talks about this Larry guy. Yet they're hounding Donald Trump. I think there might be that he was on his plane one time. I believe he flew from West Palm Beach to New York. He was kicked out of Mar-a-Lago. Epstein was kicked out of Mar-a-Lago by Donald Trump back in, 2006 or 7, or it might have been even earlier than that, before he was convicted the first time, or when he was convicted. Didn't have a chance to get convicted because I don't know. I don't know. I don't see any proof that he wasn't. I know what Dan Bongino says and Kash Patel, but I don't see any proof that he did commit suicide, and I don't see any proof that he wasn't murdered. All I see is a video of an empty area that, with AI, could have been doctored. I don't know. I'm not saying it was, just I don't know. But I'll tell you what, this deep state, Donald Trump definitely has his hands full trying to get anything done the way the mainstream media is trying to beat the shit out of him. Let me click on this Rumble link and show you that this does come from Truth Bomb Mary. I'm following her channel. I've given her a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. Here you go. And I'm going to jump back here. Again, this video, I'm like halfway through it. The link to this video is right here in the description box if you want to watch more of it. But let's see what Dr. Steve Turley says about Trump drops jaw-dropping news on Epstein list. Let's take a listen to this.
Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve. I hope you're having an amazing weekend. And we've got some amazing breaking news here. President Trump just went absolutely nuclear and dropped actual names connected to Jeffrey Epstein. So I'm sure many of you know that Trump has promised reporters that he's going to make public an Epstein list of high-profile people who basically lived with Jeffrey Epstein, as he put it, and of course potentially engaged in some pretty heinous behavior. But we don't have to wait for the list. And that's because Trump is already dropping names. And of course, the first name on that proverbial list is none other than Bill Clinton. Trump said, if you're interested in who's routinely hanging out with Epstein, he's telling the press this, then you ought to be asking Clinton, who went to the island 28 times. Of course, Trump contrasted himself, saying, I've never been to that island. He knew Epstein, everyone.
Before we go any further, I don't know, has anyone seen any interviews of Bill Clinton by the mainstream media? Donald Trump flew on Epstein's plane once from West Palm to New York. Bill Clinton went to the island 28 times. Have you seen any? You would think Bill Clinton would have some knowledge of people that went there. Has anyone, let me know in the comments below or in the chat, has anyone seen any interviews of Bill Clinton by the mainstream media? Please let me know, because I'd like to see that. I really would.
In New York knew Epstein, but he said Clinton was at the island dozens of times. I've never even been there. But then he dropped a second bombshell. He said, you ought to be speaking to Larry Summers. Now, if you don't know, Larry Summers is the former Harvard president who we now know met with Epstein over a dozen times after his conviction. Summers actually had several connections with Epstein, primarily two. This is a 2003 article in the Harvard Crimson highlighted what they called a very special connection between Summers and Epstein during Summers' time as Harvard's president. So Epstein apparently made substantial pledges to the university, endowing a program. He even received an office for personal use, despite lacking any formal connection to Harvard. That was the first connection. The second involves flights on Epstein's plane. Flight records presented back in 2021 indicate Summers flew on Epstein's private plane multiple times, including while he was Deputy Secretary of the Treasury under Clinton and during his Harvard presidency. So Trump just dropped that bombshell. Then he dropped the third bombshell. He said, you ought to be speaking about some of his friends that are these hedge fund guys. They're all over the place. And that's when we got the most jaw-dropping part of all this. That's when he said, I'll give you a list. I'll give you a list of their names, these guys who basically lived with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the fact that Trump is naming names here right now and promising to release lists is not coincidental. That timing overlaps perfectly with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who's Trump's former attorney who defended him with that whole sham New York trial. He's been conducting a 2-day interview with none other than Ghislaine Maxwell. 9 hours total, as I understand it. So you may have heard Maxwell was granted limited immunity and answered questions about approximately 100 different people connected to Epstein. And her attorneys are saying she didn't hold back. She answered every single question in vivid detail. Maxwell received limited immunity during the interviews, meaning that her responses can't be used against her. So she's essentially been given a free pass to tell everything she knows about everyone she knows. Now, think about it. Who has more dirt on the Epstein operation than Ghislaine Maxwell? She was there with him for decades. She was the only one in the inner operation that was convicted and sent to prison. She knows where all the bodies are buried, as figuratively speak. Well, maybe not so. And she's obviously looking for a pardon. So while it certainly had a rocky rollout for sure, Trump appears to be playing this Epstein card perfectly. While the fake news media tries to drag him into the Epstein story, he's systematically redirecting attention to the actual swamp creatures. Clinton in his 28 island visits, Larry Summers in his post-conviction meetings, the hedge fund elite who lived with Epstein, in Trump's words. All the while, NSA and Justice Department are now considering indicting Obama and his inner circle for what Tulsi called treasonous conspiracy against Trump. And all of this is ultimately bound together by the rogue parallel government we call the deep state, or the administrative state, or the swamp. And that's what's so key here. This isn't ultimately about Epstein or Clinton or even Obama. This is ultimately about the deep state, an unelected group of intelligence operatives that function together as a rogue parallel government that governs by blackmail and murder. That's what this is ultimately about. We're on the cusp of exposing the way intelligence agencies around the world have used those dark habits as a means of blackmail to get these powerful and wealthy men to comply with their international intrigue, which involves basically running the world, instituting color revolutions and regime changes, all by this rogue parallel government comprised of unelected intelligence agencies. So that's absolutely key to get. This isn't ultimately about Epstein. This is about how he was used as an asset for the deep state, for international intelligence agencies, 3-letter agencies that have empowered themselves largely through the dynamic of blackmail, blackmailing the world's richest and most powerful people to comply with and help enforce their rogue rule over much of the world's affairs. The Epstein saga is bringing this rogue rule to the fore, to the surface. And it explains precisely why the legacy media, which has been totally complicit in all of this, it explains why they and the Democrats are trying so hard to tie Trump to Epstein. Think about it. It's because they know the real list would destroy them. And so what are they doing? They're actually exposing real time their blackmail tactics. They're showing all the world precisely the kinds of threats, the blackmail that they use on world leaders if those world leaders come forward with the truth. If you try to expose us, we're going to bring you down, either with a real compromising situation you found yourself in, like the fellows on Epstein's list, or like in the case with Obama and his inner circle, we're going to completely fabricate something like the Russian collusion hoax. Either way, you play the game the DC swamp wants you to play, or we're going to take you down. The legacy media, in desperately trying to pin Trump to Epstein, is playing out this blackmail operation in real time. The problem is, of course, it's no longer working. Again, the deep state appears to have met its match. Trump is politically unstoppable at this point. So we can be sure that the deep state is absolutely panicking this weekend between Trump's promise to release names on the Epstein list and Ghislaine Maxwell's immunity spilling the beans on upwards of 100 different people associated with Epstein. We may finally be looking at the end of the line for the swamp.
We can only hope, folks. We can only hope. Okay, this does come from Dr. Steve Turley on YouTube. I am subscribed to his channel. He didn't post this on Rumble for some reason. I'm not sure why. But anyway, I am subscribed to his channel. I've given him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. Okay, let's jump back here and see what's next with Bannons War Room. UK polls now confirm what WarRoom said for years. Nigel Farage set to have most MPs. All right, let's see what this is all about.
I mean, hell, they've run.
Let me back it up to the beginning for you. Here we
Ben
go.
Harnwell from Rome. You know a couple of things about this. Is President Trump right? Is Matt Goodwin correct? Are the polls that show, and folks, the reason this poll's so stunning, the reform guys have no money. This is all bootstrapped. Nigel's in Commons right now, but if you see, I could show you videos where Nigel, you can't even hear him when he stands up to speak. He's shouted down by both parties, the Tories and the Labour. It's 34% for reform, Ben. It's 16%, I think, for the Tories. The Tories have been around for a couple of 100 years. I mean, hell, they've run Great Britain for 2/3 of that time. What is going on? And Trump throws down right when he gets off the plane, says, hey, look, I'm talking, you know, the head of the EU's coming over. I'm going to talk to Starmer. We're trying to cut this deal with the EU. But, hey, forget about it. You got to take care of this. If this mass immigration problem didn't get solved, you're not even going to have you're not going to have countries. Forget Europe. Ben Harnwell from Rome, your thoughts and observations.
Well, let's tie all these things together, Stephen. Good morning to you. Firstly, just to recap what President Trump said this morning on his flight over. On immigration, you better get your act together. You're not going to have Europe anymore. And that is an absolute throwdown to Ursula von der Leyen, who's flying out there to meet POTUS in Scotland. And as Matt Goodwin was saying, Europe, specifically the UK, is taking inspiration from the fact that the most powerful, economically powerful, culturally powerful, militarily powerful nation in the history of mankind is sending people back. And when the United States does that, when it actually embarks on forced repatriations, it basically throws great difficulty in the performative center-right political spectrum because words are no longer satisfactory, right? If Donald Trump is actually sending people back, then, you know, and you see this definitely in the UK, less so in Italy because there still isn't a credible alternative to Giorgia Meloni. But just the words that, you know, we need to have stronger controls and, you know, we need to take people's concerns into consideration. It's not going to do the trick. And here's the thing, Steve, about the UK. And as you say, the Tory party is the world's oldest political party. And it's over the recent generation and a half, its political leadership really has driven that party into the ground. You mentioned Boris Johnson. I still, to this day, have a small residue of affection for that guy. But when was the last time we saw political leadership in the Tory party fight for the UK's interests with the intensity and passion that Boris Johnson fought for Ukraine? That's why the Tory party is imploding, because they can't even pretend to care about the people whose votes are hemorrhaging away to Nigel Farage and reform. Let me repeat that. When was the last time in the UK a Conservative leader fought for British interests with the passion and dedication that Boris Johnson fought for Zelensky and the Zelensky regime in Ukraine? And you'd really need to go back to the days of Margaret Thatcher. And that's why you see the poll flip that you see that came out 2 days ago. It's why reform is on 34%. Because Nigel Farage has been absolutely consistent. It's a guy I first met in 1998, actually, when he was first running for his seat in the European Parliament. He has said the same thing. In fact, you could look at a Nigel Farage speech. You wouldn't know by looking at the speech when it was said, because he's been so consistent. And if there's one thing you can say about the British people, is that they are fair. They may be weak occasionally. They may not come out and burn tractors and what have you on the roads like the French do. But if it's one attribute that you can say in favour of the Brits, is that they are fair. And they respect being fair. They respect Nigel Farage's integrity and his coherence. And the polls are finally starting to show that. As Matt Goodwin said in the last segment, if there were an election today, Nigel Farage would win that. And that's right. That's absolutely right. Because, and it's the same thing that we were discussing just a few days ago in Japan with that Sanheito political party. People are getting, they're beyond fed up. It's very difficult to get someone to change political affiliation, but it's actually happening. It's happening right around the world, drawing inspiration from the United States, because people are it's not that they're fed up, they will no longer tolerate the performative going through the motions of the centre-right political establishment. And the UK is going to be the next to fall.
The lesson for us, and this gets to Tulsi's conspiracy, this Epstein thing, is that you had Brexit 9 years ago. And it's actually, you could argue it's worse today, right? Don't get me wrong. You've gotten your sovereignty back to a degree, but the elites have refused to implement it. Is that a lesson for the United States? This is why we must take on the deep state. I mean, we don't have a choice. If we don't do that, if you don't break that, all the tax cuts, everything we've done, it's just going to be unwound over time. Sir, your observations.
What did the Tory party do when David Cameron, the then Prime Minister who called that referendum, what did the Tory party do when David Cameron resigned as Prime Minister in order to deal with the fallout of Brexit? Before you got on to the Get Brexit Done, they handed the party over to Theresa May, who campaigned to remain. That is in-your-face contempt for a political party to its public. The Tory party loses a referendum, right? The British, I think it was 53, 47. It was a clear, decisive result. And the Tory party, David Cameron resigned. And the next day, the next Prime Minister is Theresa May, who campaigned to remain. That is one of the reasons to this day. They tried to, Steve, the point is they tried to sabotage, the Tory party tried to sabotage the effectiveness, the opportunities of Brexit from day one. And the British people stood there, and you say Brexit hasn't been implemented to the best of the potential that's there, and that's absolutely true, and that's deliberate. That's absolutely deliberate. And you see these signs from the political leadership of both political parties sort of dropping hints occasionally about, perhaps we should go back in. That is one thing that the British public to this day are adamant they do not want to see. Even if it has been painful for the UK, and even if the British Tory party had tried when it was in power to sabotage that result, the British public are absolutely adamant they do not want to go back into the European Union. So we need a political party that is going to make the best out of independence and the nationalist integrity that being outside of the union affords. Because I voted for Brexit. I haven't had a scintilla of regret over that, but it has been a painful experience for the UK. There are some advantages to being inside the European Union. For a country like the UK, the advantages of being out vastly supersede the advantages of being in the Union. But there are certain advantages of being in the European Union. We need a political party as a government like Reform UK, led by someone like Nigel Farage, to draw out those advantages so that the working class, the middle class of the UK can start to perceive the benefits that being outside of that union afford, because the whole grifting political class is dependent. It was brilliant for the Steve Brexit, because above all the elected opportunity you had in Parliament, if you lost your seat, if you were thrown out by the electorate at the general election, you could then go kissing up and try and get an even bigger grift going by getting yourself elected to Brussels, a sinecure there, of which all the benefits and the kilometrage and everything vastly exceed the grift available to an ordinary backbench member of Parliament.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause that there now. I know this is about the UK, but the point behind this is the deep state is not just in the United States. I mean, it's global. It's worldwide. And it's deep and it's wide, okay? So I am shocked and pleasantly surprised that Donald Trump has been able to do the things that he's done. He must have a heart of stone to be able to, and of gold, to be able to take on this corrupt mafia, this global mafia, and actually get things done. So let me go ahead and click on this Rumble link here and show you that this video does come from Bannons War Room. I'm following the channel. I've given them a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. All right, let's jump back here and see what Doug in Exile has to say. Is the producer, Doug in Exile, Mike Johnson brings 50 executive orders to the Senate. All right, well, let's check this out then.
Been screwing around, Speaker Mike Johnson.
Let me get this back here to the beginning for you. Here we go.
Is actually doing the people's work. I know they're taking a recess vacation they should not be taking, but this is the most important part of the Trump agenda that he is backing up and pushing into law. And you'll see everyone who says Mike Johnson's a rhino are liars. They have no facts behind them, and we are bringing you the facts. Of course, no one else is going to report on it because it only pays to lie about Mike Johnson, apparently. Okay, welcome to Doug in Exile. Hold on, everybody. Where's my manners? Welcome to Doug in Exile. Hope you guys have subscribed. That gets me to 1 million subscribers. That makes me happy. And leave a comment below on what you think of Mike Johnson. Let me see if I can convince you a little something during this episode, okay? Shout out to the Quad Club, the people that watch 4 episodes a day all the way through. You guys really help. You help pay my salary. You help pay for this is the last recording that I'm doing from San Diego. Then I'll be back home in Franklin, Tennessee for the next recording on Monday. Thank you guys for watching and for supporting me and supporting my vacation by watching these while I'm on vacation. Okay, look at this. What do we have here? This is Mike Johnson over on Twitter. He says the American people gave the President of the United States a clear mandate to enact his America First agenda, and House Republicans are answering that call. To date, we voted to codify 50 of the president's executive actions into law. We're going to go over these 50 executive actions. He has them listed out here. I have them listed out here in even bigger type. So we can just go through this list real quick of the ones. Remember, executive orders or executive actions are nothing if it's just Trump's putting them during his term. They will go away when the next president comes into office. If Congress codifies them into law, okay, by them just backing it up, saying we back up this presidential order with with a majority vote, then they stay forever. So here are the 50 things that Mike Johnson is working to make stay forever of the Trump agenda. And you tell me if you think Mike Johnson's doing a good job by promoting all of this. Preserving and protecting the integrity of American elections, defending women from gender ideology extremism, unleashing prosperity through deregulation, imposing sanctions on the International Criminal Court, immediate expansion of the American timber production, which we need more wood, restoring names that honor American greatness, protecting American communities from criminal aliens. Yeah, that's kind of an important one. Small Business Administration overhaul of the reckless Biden-era lending program, ending taxpayer subsidization of open borders, making the DC, District of Columbia, safe and beautiful, memorandum for the heads of executive departments and agencies advancing U.S. interests when funding non-governmental organizations, putting America first in international environmental agreements, radical transparency about wasteful spending, that's DOGE stuff, withdrawing from the U.S. World Health Organization, yes, the WHO, I've had some trouble with them. Withdrawing the U.S. from and ending funding of certain UN organizations and reviewing U.S. support to all international organizations, reevaluating, realigning U.S. foreign aid, restoring freedom of speech and ending federal censorship. Who could be against that but a totalitarian? You know me, I'm a First Amendment advocate. I love freedom in the arts. I love freedom of speech, freedom of religion. That's all under that First Amendment, under free speech. And it's great that he put that amendment in. Ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing, true, securing our borders, protecting children from surgical mutilation, expanding migrant operations center at Naval Station Guantanamo Bay to full capacity, expanding access to in vitro fertilization. I'm against that one. I'm not for expanding access to in vitro. I'm willing to go against the president on some of these and Mike Johnson. Restoring America's maritime dominance, declaring a national emergency at the southern border, reinvigorating America's beautiful, clean coal industry. We like that. And unleashing American energy. Next up, these are the next 25. And again, just remember, if Trump didn't win, none of these would be implemented. You'd have the Biden administration still trying to perform operations on children, still trying to push DEI in fire departments and in the military instead of military effectiveness and merit. Unleashing Alaska's extraordinary resourceful potential, celebrating America's 250th birthday, declaring a national emergency, national energy emergency, meaning we need to drill, enforcing the Hyde Amendment, immediate measures to increase American mineral production. I could go on and on. The Iron Dome for America, keep America safe in aviation, unleashing American drone dominance, reforming accreditation to strengthen higher education, continuing the reduction of reducing the federal bureaucracy. Who isn't for that besides Democrats who oppose all this stuff? So those are the major call outs that Mike Johnson is working to codify into law with the 119th Congress. And we're thankful for it. Now, here's another one on it, on the same subject. He says, Speaker Johnson's right. Congress is delivering on Trump's mandate by locking in 50 executive actions, including border security, energy dominance, and slashing bureaucratic bloat. This is the one way the Senate can help Trump. The one beautiful bill alone codified 28 of the key reforms, like unleashing Alaska's resources and axing DEI waste, while the Department of Government Efficiency's $775 billion savings proves cutting fraud works, prioritizing American safety and prosperity over globalist handouts isn't just talk, it's measurable results. When DC stops burning cash on open borders and radical agendas, taxpayers win. Now enforce it harder. No more half measures. We want to see Mike Johnson make these numbers stack up even harder. That's what I'm supporting. And then just to show you what the Democrats are saying, this is what the Democrats posted against Mike Johnson. This is one girl named Deanna. Now comparing this to Project 2025. And this is my favorite Democrat fear-mongering. Anytime they bring up Project 2025. So she's bringing up Project 2025. Yep, Trump's right on track. He's following the manual that he, quote, didn't even know about perfectly. It's as if they had already created the executive orders for him ahead of time. Hint, they did. Now, that's a conspiracy. That, lefties are a little loopy on this stuff. They're a little far out there. So they're claiming that Project 2025 really wrote this entire agenda, and Trump only performed all these executive orders in compliance with the spooky conspiracy Project 2025, as if Trump wouldn't be for all those things that I said wasn't the America First agenda. So main thing is, guys, I'm glad you guys check in here and have been watching this channel. I've met some of you walking down on the streets of San Diego. I have the nicest audience in the world. I love talking to you guys. And
okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause that there. And really, if this is, and it's not, I mean, Project 2025, she's complaining about these things here that they're going to put into law as a bad thing? Was that her point? I don't know. Of course, obviously she's a liberal Democrat, so they definitely have some issues up here. All right, as you can see, this does come from Doug in Exile. I've given him a thumbs up. I'm subscribed to his channel. If you can give me a thumbs up and follow my channel, that would be fantastic. All right, let's jump back here. And these 4 videos that I shared with you folks come directly from the producer's channel. Okay, and I've posted these videos on Murtec.com. Now, I don't get any commissions or royalties for sharing this information out, but I do like to put a package together for you every night to give you some perspective of what's actually going on in the world, and so that you don't have to rely on the lying legacy media. Now, we have a little extra time here, so I'm going to jump over here to Murtec.com and slide down here to Wendy Bell and play a little bit of her program, starting off at about the second hour of her program. Democrats are as fake as Russian collusion. Okay, well, let's click on this and see what she has to say.
Long. So what do you guys think about this? Before I bounce over into John Ratcliffe over at the CIA, saying, you know what, as much as the media wants you to believe that this huge Russia collusion nonsense that Barack Obama concocted in the Oval Office, thanks to Hillary Clinton, Fusion GPS, and the Steele dossier, right? We've got more details coming out if you don't quite trust us yet, because they're damning. Before that, I want to ask you this. How do you guys feel about a rebate? How do you feel about that? Donald Trump is proposing rebates for U.S. taxpayers from the tariff revenues. It says the rebates would come as the U.S. government collects these record tariff revenues. There is no other world in which we live where a different person other than Donald Trump makes this happen. Do you guys really see Hillary Clinton doing this? Do you see Elizabeth Warren or Pete Buttigieg? Do you see Gavin Newsom out there? Bernie Sanders coming up with anything to open the floodgates of revenue pouring into this country? No. And Trump is like, look, I think you guys have paid enough. Maybe it's time for you to get some of your money back. Donald Trump floated the idea of sending U.S. taxpayers rebate checks from tariff income collected this year. Speaking to reporters before departing for Scotland over the weekend, said the White House is thinking about issuing rebates to individuals in certain income levels. He says, we have so much money coming in, we're thinking about a little rebate, while the primary objective is to pay down the national debt. Like, has any precedent said that? No. They didn't say that when Joe Biden was allegedly president for a hot second, even though we know he wasn't. They just ratcheted up the spending. I mean, is it surprising to you guys that only 8% in that Wall Street Journal poll view Democrats favorably? 8%? That's freaking punishing. So however rebates would go, there's going to be a pot of money. And President Trump is keenly aware that it's yours. And that you have a right to it. Now, I want to go here. I want to read you this from the New York Post. I've got 2 audio sound bites, both with CIA Director John Ratcliffe. New York Post headline, CIA Director teases more files on alleged Russiagate links to Hillary Clinton. Quote, finally coming to light. CIA Director John Ratcliffe on Sunday teased plans to publicly disclose additional files that allegedly helped tie Hillary Clinton to false claims of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. Ratcliffe specifically hinted at underlying intelligence referenced in the annex of the Durham report, which scrutinized probes into the Clinton versus President Trump matchup and is currently undergoing a declassification process. I guess they have these reports, and the reports don't just stop the day that they're presented to Congress. Other details come out. They include that as annexed data, an addendum to what we've already discovered. What hasn't come out yet, and what's going to come out, is the underlying intelligence, Ratcliffe said. And what that intelligence shows is that part of this was a Hillary Clinton plan, but part of it was an FBI plan to be an accelerant to the fake Steele dossier. You know, I'm a very basic woman. Just try harder not to suck. Like, pretend Hillary or Barack or Clapper or Comey or Strzok or any of these, I don't know, fake it for a minute that you give a crap about anything other than lying and stealing and fraudulently staying in power. Here's John Ratcliffe on with Maria Bartiromo. He's like, look, this isn't some like pie in the sky concoction. We've had these documents since Donald Trump put his hand on that Bible on January 20th. And ever since that day, our team has been poring over this. And we have stumbled upon some of the most egregious, outrageous examples of traitorous, treasonous behavior from a former president and a former Secretary of State and First Lady who fancied herself presidential freaking material. Can you even imagine what kind of America we would have if that had happened? Here's John Ratcliffe, CIA Director, clip 1.
So part of what came out last week was about how John Brennan, Clapper, Comey, they all pushed the known fake Steele dossier into intelligence community assessments and as the basis for Crossfire Hurricane and all that. But what hasn't come out yet and what's going to come out is the underlying intelligence that I have spent the last few months making recommendations about final declassification and sent that to the Department of Justice that will come out in the John Durham report classified annex. And what that intelligence shows, Maria, is that part of this was a Hillary Clinton plan, but part of it was an FBI plan to be an accelerant to that fake Steele dossier, to those fake Russia collusion claims by pouring oil on the fire, by amplifying the lie and burying the truth of what Hillary Clinton was up to.
You know, this is probably why Dan Bongino, the assistant FBI director, wrote out over the weekend, he truthed out or tweeted out that what he has himself seen, the documents, the data, the proof, has shaken him to his core. Now, he didn't get into specifics, but you've got James Comey's FBI working to crank up the heat on a bogus story about Trump being a Russian asset or colluding somehow with the Russians. And you've got the FBI. You got to root this stuff. You've got to cut it off. You have to excise the cancer. It's not good enough to go in and be like, oh, it looks like it's gone. We need a full scoop. I need all of the parameters coming back negative for cancer. And that means a major hatchet job. That means rewarding some whistleblowers who dared to be the ones to step forward and absolutely exposing those who lied to us for years. John Ratcliffe continues. He's like, look, these people conspired to perpetuate a hoax on the American people. He's talking Brennan, Hillary, Comey, all of them testified under oath within the past 5 years. And what they've said about all this, which now with the truth we're understanding now that we've come into office, completely contradicts their testimony. They've perjured themselves. This could be a very interesting strategy.
John Brennan testified to John Durham in August of 2020. He also testified to the House Oversight Committee in 2022. Hillary Clinton testified before John Durham under oath in 2022. James Comey testified before the Senate committee in September 2020. All of that's within the last 5 years. And much of that testimony is frankly completely inconsistent with what our underlying intelligence that is about to be declassified in the Durham Annex, what that reflects. And so, Pam Bondi does have a strike force. It is a different Department of Justice, a different FBI, and an opportunity to look at how these people really did conspire to run a hoax, a fraud on the American people and against Donald Trump's presidency. And so coming forward, we understand that they did this, but now we need to understand how they did this. And I think that's why you see the left losing their minds over this, Maria, saying, why are you spending time? This is vindictive. You're going back. This is Donald Trump, seeking retribution. It's not. Donald Trump's election by the American people was a statement, Maria. They said to everyone, we know what you did to Donald Trump, and we reelected him because we know this was all fake. We know it was a hoax. Now we want to understand how you did it so that it can't happen again.
And by the way, this conversation would not be complete without us talking about the fake news. Did you see Trump's truth over the weekend? I love it. I love how he drives people nuts. He writes this, wow. Comcast, and he says Comcast's NBC is down in viewership almost 28% this year. Their programming is terrible. Their management, even worse. They're an arm of the Democrat Party and should be held accountable for that. Likewise, fake news, ABC. And then 7 minutes later, he had more to say. Networks aren't allowed to be political pawns for the Democrat Party. It has become so outrageous that, in my opinion, their licenses could and should be revoked. The left say, oh, he wants only a sycophant's media just to be in his silo so everything goes his way. And we're like, no, we think that all of you have been lying to us for so long. Need to be demonetized, deplatformed, deconstructed, and kicked into the ash bin of irrelevance, where you belong, because there's a difference. When we come back on the Wendy Bell Radio program.
Okay, I'm going to pause that. Now, I didn't know what she was going to say. I'm glad she said what she said. I just set this up at that time when she came back for the top of her second hour. But she always provides amazing, amazing information. All right, let me click on this Rumble link here and show you this video does come from Wendy Bell Radio. I am following her channel. I've given her a thumbs up. And the thing that concerns me the most, yes, it's good that this has come out and exposes all this fraud and corruption, but the thing that concerns me the most is what's coming up in about 16 months, and that would be the 2026 elections. Okay? If we don't get these elections cleaned up, the Democrats are going to go all out, full bore, hold nothing back to steal as many Democrat seats in the House and the Senate that they possibly can. The fraudulent election corruption needs to be exposed and corrected so that doesn't happen again. So another election doesn't get stolen from the rightful winner. All right? Ask Kari Lake about that. She had 2 elections stolen from her. 2 elections. These people that are involved in this corruption and fraud in these elections, they need to be prosecuted. You don't hear me say this much about prosecuting people or holding holding them accountable. I'd like to see the information come out on Hillary and Brennan and Comey. But I do want the people that have corrupted these elections to go to prison, because if they don't, if they get away with it, they're just going to do it again, and even harder. They're going to push the envelope as far as they possibly can and get all this fraudulent people into office. And then when it is, okay, at this point in time, if the corruption is found, people go to jail, the people that fraudulently got into the office are still going to be there. They're not going anywhere. So in the future, if those people get elected again, or more corruption is created, they're going to get by with it. It needs to be stopped now. All right? Okay, let's get back here. And again, folks, this information that I'm sharing with you comes directly from the producer. Okay? This last video that I shared with you from Wendy Bell is right here at Mertech.com, where I have over 55 no-nonsense, common sense, logic, and truth videos. Okay? I don't have time to play all of them. I gave you a little snippet. The four that I had originally scheduled in my podcast, because they were kind of quick snippets. But I don't have time to share all of them with you. That's why I have my daily news wrap-up coming up about 9:30, where I have over 70 videos in my playlist right now. I'm going to go back and update it. There'll be even more when I come back. So let me come over here one more time. And there's the live chats. Let me go ahead and copy these, me and Debbie BS, into a comment here, so that the chats will stay permanent with this video. All right, and let me do a quick refresh on this. All right. Okay, I've had 167 people watch this so far. I've got 27 people watching right now, and I've got 3 thumbs up. So, if I could get 24 of you to slide down here and give me a thumbs up, can you do it for me, please? I would greatly appreciate it. It helps me get my information out. And all I'm trying to do here is help people have an understanding of what's really going on in the world, rather than having to rely on the bullshit from the Democrats and the mainstream media. All right, so I do want to thank you for your time. Hopefully, I'll get to see you again later, and may God bless.